Hey guys, welcome back to the Strong Girl Gossip podcast. Today we're going to be taking you through some myths and we're going to be busting them.
Yeah, so there's so many myths out there, isn't there? Especially gym and fitness related, but we're going to talk and put our focus into 4 in particular. So beginning with a very, very big one. Do women get bulky when they start lifting weights? Honestly, this is such a interesting topic, isn't it? Because I think a lot of women are so fearful to get themselves into the weight training area and to get themselves starting strength training because they think they're going to start looking like a man, or they're going to gain immediately all of this unwanted muscle and be really unhappy with the way that they look. But let's just start off first of all by saying, I wish that was the case. I wish could actually be built that quickly. Like, I wish that could be the case, but it's really not, is it?
No, it's not. And it's a real shame because I'm someone who was like put off the gym for a really long time because I was like, oh, well, no, I can't go in and do weights because I'm just going to get absolutely hench and have a massive upper body. And it's just not the case. I mean, you see, I think to be honest, let's talk about where this idea comes from, right? I think in years gone by, the only kind of representation of women who lift weights we had was professional athletes. They've been doing this since they were kids, you know? And yeah, maybe they are a little bit more muscly. Maybe they do carry their body weight in a different way to someone who, works in Tesco's down the road. But that is not to say that if you do that type of training, twice, 3 times a week, that you're gonna look like that person.
No, not at all. And I think the toned look that most people are going for is essentially just you building muscle. So even though you may feel fearful of it, actually, the chances are that is what you actually want. It's just understanding the terminology as well, because I think there's so many words thrown out there, isn't there? Like lean, toned, muscular.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what do I want to be? I want to be toned. But when you're saying that you want to be toned as well, that is what you are saying. You want to build muscle mass. So it's not something to be feared of at all. I think the word bulky is, again, just coming from a misconception of, if I'm going to start lifting, I'm going to start like really growing in size. One, you need to be eating a lot of food, a lot of the right food as well. People who do this, like bodybuilders for a living, they are so mindful of what they are putting into their body. Everything is counted to the nth degree and all of these things. So you'd have to be very educated on it to really gain the amount of muscle that you might be fearful of gaining. So you starting strength training 2, 3, even 4, 5 times a week is not going to turn you into Hulk. Just know that.
Literally. And I think the thing that when I started weight training, I started to get a little bit more education around it. And when I realized, oh, it's actually not going to make me bulky. These women have been working for years to achieve that look or to achieve that amount of muscle mass for the sport that they do. I started to realize that the way I trained has a massive impact on where that muscle is built. And yeah, when I did start training, I wanted a bigger butt. And I think it's important to note that, like you said, Jess, like it takes a while to achieve that muscle growth. And also, it's down to you. You're in control of what you do in the gym. And if you're doing everything right, you're not going to end up looking a way that you don't want to look because there's just purely way too much planning and effort that goes into creating that quote unquote bulky look. And I think something we forget as well as women is we are just not hormonally made up to achieve that bulky look. We'd have to have a lot more testosterone to get bulky. And I think a good example is if you're familiar with the bodybuilding world and maybe, women who stand on the stage, loads of fake tan, flexing their muscles, there's a couple of people in that industry, who maybe would inject testosterone and put extra testosterone in their body to achieve a bulkier look. And I just think that says it all. We are not naturally set up to get massive muscles, especially in the upper body.
Some people will gain muscle faster than others, but again, this is going to come down to genetics. So in a nutshell, I wouldn't be getting too worried about that at all. You've got to be super intentional to be building that kind of muscle. And let's just finish with like muscle's cool as well. Like I think it looks amazing on women. So don't be fearful of it. Like it's great to look strong and be strong. So own it is what I say.
I've been trying to get bulky for years, mate.
It's not
Still
happening.
not happening.
Trying my best. Now,
All right, so next one, going on to fasted training. I think I see this a lot on socials. This myth is kind of the thought that fasted training gets you better results or increases fat loss. What do you think?
I think it really is, first of all, very person dependent. So I'm not going to sit here and say you need to eat before you train because ultimately you know your body best. And some people genuinely do just train better fasted. Whether that's first thing, it usually is first thing in the morning. So they just feel like they train best, they get up, they train, and then fuel afterwards. So if that is you and it works for you, who am I to say that that doesn't work? But what I would say is if you are someone, especially who is doing consistent strength training, maybe Olympic weightlifting, any powerlifting, whatever it is, and you know that you are exerting so much energy because it is challenging you, the lifts that you're doing are heavy, which, let's be real, it should be challenging you in some way anyway, whatever you are doing. You do need some fuel because if you think about the energy that you are exerting out in that session, if you've got nothing in there, of course you will have from previous days and all of that, but if you've got no immediate fuel, then you're going to run out of energy quite quickly, and then your session isn't going to be the best that it could potentially be. So what I would say is, even if you are not like, if you are a morning trainer, for example, if you are not a big eater, maybe you could look into things such as Lucozade Sports, bananas, really fast carbs, and things that are going to just provide you with that bit of extra energy. But training fasted doesn't necessarily get you better results. I understand why sometimes people do it, but it isn't going to just magically get you more insane results just by eating nothing before. I would say, from a personal opinion, that I personally, like talking about me myself, I get better results when I am fueled up and when I have had fuel for training, whether that's first thing in the morning, later at night. For example, if I am training late afternoon, I'll always make sure that I've got something in my stomach 60 minutes or so before, just so my body has got some energy.
Yeah, I think it's important as well to touch on the fact that it is person dependent. And if you're someone who's just trying to build the habit of going to the gym and actually waking up half an hour earlier than you need to just to eat a meal or whatever it is, if that's going to put you off going to the gym, then it's not something you need to worry about. But I think where the myth comes from is really trying to force yourself to
Yeah.
be fasted when you are training. If not eating before you train is something that you like to do, go for it. You might, of course, not see as much progress in your strength and muscle gains over time because you're not fueled, but it's not something that we should be forcing our bodies to do, especially as women. I mean, we see a lot of, I feel like I've had a couple of questions on, oh, I've seen this research or I saw this reel that said fasted training's good for fat loss. And my blind, sorry, if you're on Spotify, my blind just came down in front of me. Yeah, there's this research that it's better for for fat loss. And it's like, well, actually, if you look deeper into that research, pretty much all of it is done on men. For women, we have more sensitive bodies hormonally, going back to hormones, and it's just not going to provide you with the best base going forwards. We want essentially something in our bodies to reduce that stress hormone cortisol, which, without going into too much detail, prolonged exposure to can just have adverse effects of what you're trying to achieve. It can lead to fat loss, it can lead to water retention and things like this. So as much as it's okay to train fasted if that feels good for you, don't do it purposely, I would say.
I think that's a really important point. Like, look into why are you training fasted? Is it
Yeah.
because it works for you? Is it because, again, your training time is first thing in the morning and you won't get to the gym if you don't? And if that is the case, by the way, get yourself some Lucozade Sports, Serene, bananas, something easy, breakfast bars in the car. That will sort that problem. Or are you doing it because you think, like you say, it's going to get you better results and because it is the answer? If you truly do believe that, hopefully this has helped you and helped you to understand that honestly, it's not going to make a difference. And I would argue that the more fueled you are, the better that you will perform and get out of that session. The more you get out of the session,
Yeah.
the progress will be.
Yeah. So to conclude that, no, fasted training will not get you better results.
On to number 3 then. So keeping this one short and sweet. Does cardio kill your gains? What do we think?
What do I think? First of all, I want to say that even though this is a strength training podcast and that is what we're all about, cardio is still good for you. You know, it's good for your heart and lungs. So no, cardio does not kill your gains. However, if you're doing too much of it, if you're feeling frazzled from the amount of cardio you're doing, your body's not going to have the resources to recover properly from A, your cardio, and B, your strength gains. So if you are doing cardio, first of all, thinking about where it is in your week, maybe doing it at the end of your session so that you can prioritize your strength training, or maybe having a whole separate day for cardio, so that you are really prioritizing your strength gains. And as well, making sure you're fueling for it, making sure your body is having enough food to recover from all of the exercise you've put it through.
I think you've hit the nail on the head with that one, to be honest. All I would say and re-emphasize with that is, what is your priority? And if you're someone listening to this podcast, I'm going to assume that strength training and weightlifting is your priority. So if that is the case, then make sure that your cardio is slotting in around that, just like Ella said.
Okay, so last myth. Do you have to train to failure to make progress and get strong?
This is a big one, isn't it? It's everywhere. Let's again first clarify that train to failure in small amounts is good. It just means that you are pushing your body to its limits. When you push your body to its limits, strength gains and all the gains are made. So it is good. But if you are doing this every single session, you are going to burn out. You are going to feel fatigued. You're not going to be able to optimize your training sessions. You're not going to show up to your training sessions with the right energy and, to be honest, motivation. Because if you know that you have got to push to your max every single session, I'm thinking from a personal point of view, I'll feel very unmotivated to get there, because sometimes that just isn't the case. So what I would be thinking about for training till failure is maybe having something like test weeks in your training program, and on that particular week you do push till failure. Maybe you find yourself a new 1 rep max for your back squat. Maybe you see how many pull-ups you can get in a row without stopping, that kind of thing. And then in your weekly, like day-to-day training, if you know that, for example, you had 12 reps to do, let's just say, and if you know that you got to 11 but you could squeeze a 12th out occasionally, fine, go for it. But if you are doing that on every single exercise for every single training session, you're going to really encourage injury for starters, and B, it's just not going to be that enjoyable. It's good to push yourself and work hard, like I would encourage that, but you don't want to do it to the point where it's that exhausting that you just honestly lose interest.
Yeah. And I think a lot of these myths that we're talking about come from social media, and they come from Instagram. And I think this is the one that I've seen the most over the last couple of months on Instagram. It's that picture of someone like scrunching their face and like going for it in the gym, being like, if this isn't what all your sets look like, then you're not going to make progress. And like, I just think of myself as a fitness professional who's trained for years. Sometimes I don't even want to go to the gym, let alone train to failure. So I can't think about, someone who's just trying to start their strength training journey, thinking that they have to show up week on week in the gym, day on day even, and push their bodies to their absolute limits. Like you said, like, you are just gonna be burnt out. But I think you touched on something really good there with like test weeks and stuff like that. And genuinely, we are both coaches, and we do have a bias towards coaching, but having a coach to manage your training load, to tell you when you should be pushing hard, when's the time to pull back, and managing that for you will just genuinely make your training more sustainable, because you're not going in feeling burnt out, but you're also not going in feeling like you could get a little bit more out of your training. So yeah, and if you don't have a coach, just thinking about it smartly, with your body, when do you feel good? When do you not feel so good? And just really thinking about when's going to be useful for you to push and when it's time to just take the brakes off or put the brakes on.
Absolutely. I think one thing I would leave on that one as well is, yeah, I think it's important to try and be that 1% better every week. So maybe that is just one exercise of one training session. It doesn't
Literally.
have to be every single, like we said, every single exercise, every single training session. Maybe that is literally just you improved on something. Maybe you did one extra rep. Maybe you needed less rest. Maybe you added a little bit more weight on something or improved your technique. Like there was just some kind of progressive overload and some kind of improvement week on week in some capacity. It's not always about pushing the load and pushing the weight as well. And I think that's something super important to remember. And lastly, just touching on what you said there about listening to your body and listening to how you feel as well. I think it's really important to lean into, because there are just some weeks in the month that I just train a lot better. And it is definitely menstrual cycle related. And without going and diving into that too deep, we can definitely do an episode on it if it's wanted. Like, you need to be listening to your body. I know that there are certain times in the month that I'm going to feel more fatigued, but I'm not just going to say, okay, I'm fatigued this week because my body, or like the Flow app, if anyone uses it, says that I should be. Always listen to how you feel. And if some weeks you want to push that bit further, maybe you want to train a bit more to failure and you want to think, okay, I'm feeling really energized, I'm feeling good, I want to see what I can get this week, go for it. But then also be accepting that next week you might feel a bit more like, I just need to show up this week, and like that's okay as well.
Yeah, I just think we're all human and it's not realistic to expect yourself to go into the gym and train to failure week on week and still really like the gym and want to show up for yourself.
Absolutely. But I've liked this. I think this is good. I think they are like the most, I feel like those ones are the most that I hear anyway, fitness and gym related myths. But if anyone's listening and you're thinking, what about this? What about this? Is this true? Make sure you do drop it in the comments or drop it into one of our DMs, because we would absolutely love to do another episode like this, because I like talking about things like this as well. And with that being said, anything that you want to see, whether that's questions you'd like to answer, topics you would like us to cover, make sure that you do just drop it into our DMs and feed it back to us, because we want to make sure we're bringing out the episodes that you will benefit from.
Literally, this podcast is for you guys. So with that said, have a gorgeous, gorgeous week. And we will see you same time next week, same place for another episode.
See you later.
See ya!